Hello, everybody. Welcome to Maps and Yaps. I'm going to start this by saying I am a liar. I said that this show was not going to be regularly updated. This is going to be like my fun show, my non-wrestling escape. But there's been so much happening lately that, guys, I just had to talk about it. I don't know what else to tell you. So if you're shocked that you just got a Bridgerton episode and now you're listening to Doctor Who, well, buckle up, Bucko, because I have the bear recap. You know it's coming as soon as I see those episodes. So, hey, let's sit down for some maps and yaps. As always, I'm your host, Lyric Swinton, and today I am joined by a very, very special guest. We have Alden Diaz here. How are you today?
Hello. I love that you immediately came out and admitted that you're a liar. It's really good to have that right at the top of the show.
I believe in self-awareness.
Yeah, create some dramatic tension for the rest of it. Thanks for having me. I grabbed my purple glasses, not realizing that it was going to vibe with this, so that's great. Then I saw that you had scratched out graps for yaps, and that made it even better. I love how this is like a clubhouse feel.
You want to know what's even funnier? Technically, these glasses are purple, but I've had them so long, they've kind of faded. They almost look brown. So these were originally almost as purple as
I love that.
But
they faded in spirit.
They faded so bad. So, hey, we're all purple today. Happy Pride,
Happy Pride.
So we're talking about Doctor Who. Listen, I will say, I do think that despite how people feel about it, I feel like we are talking about Doctor Who now more than we've talked about it in years.
That is true. I think that's definitely true.
Absolutely.
I mean, even when I was working for iHeartRadio, there's a lot of nerds in that building. There's a lot of different people really plugged in. And even some of those people, which is sort of like the reason I say like that is because it's like talking to casuals in your life gives you a certain sample, certain data. Talking to people in media, you sort of are like, okay, but like, who are the people that care and would actively look? And yeah, if there was a long era there, which is not to disparage anyone in it or about it, I loved a lot of Jodie's era, but you had some people that were nerdy radio hosts and podcast people being like, yeah, I kind of fell off of Doctor Who, and like, even if they weren't being rude or annoying about it, it just felt like there was a generally accepted attitude of we had our boom from Tenet to Capaldi, and that boom is over, and let's keep going. And then Russell was like, we'll see about that.
Watch this. Watch this. Listen, so I think I fall into that category. And the thing is, I every now and then I like to do a full Doctor Who rewatch. So I'll start from Rose 2005 all the way to where we are in current days. And so the number one rule is no skips. As much as I like the rule is whenever I'm doing a full rewatch, I am not allowed to skip an episode. And so this is the first time that I'm doing a full rewatch that encompasses the 13th Doctor. So I've seen all the episodes at least once, but I'm gonna be honest, like a lot of it wasn't memorable. But you know what? That's how Capaldi was originally for me. Like I watched the episodes once, but I think like I was distracted. I was still in school at the time. I had a lot going on. And then I rewatched it and I said, holy shit, this might be the best stuff that they've ever created.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I think it's just Peter Capaldi. I think he might actually be my favorite Doctor. I only actually own one sonic screwdriver, and it's his. I have the 12th Doctor Sonic.
It's a great one. It's one.
It's fantastic.
And his era does sort of have that, like, it creeps up on you. Like, I was and I still am. Matt is my favorite. So when
Matt was my first, and like in real time.
Just love him. And when the 11th era ended, I went through my mourning like we all do. And then throughout Capaldi's first season, I had that very classic, like, well, who are you? And then, even though I, understood that he was an amazing actor, and during that series 8, I was like, this isn't the same. And now I look back on series 8 and I'm like, I was so stupid. This is so good.
Like, literally. And you know what? I think a lot of it to do with it is so like Matt was my first Doctor in real time. So when I first started watching Doctor Who, I started watching literally at the beginning of his first season.
Yeah.
I was a Tumblr girl, and so I got pulled into it that way. So
Oh
my
yeah.
original way that I watched Doctor Who was season 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So
Nice.
that's how I watched it. And so at the time I was in, I think, middle school, like or middle school, early high school, something like that, when I first started watching. And so I just had this idea that the Doctor is young and so youthful,
Yeah.
and so I don't think that I was able to really appreciate Capaldi when it first happened, to a certain extent, because I do think, like, by the time we got to around like Heaven Sent, Hell Bent, I'm like, whoa, guys, this is not even like
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Who good. This is like
It's epic.
you need like
Yeah.
awards. Like, they need to be
Mm-hmm.
calling you from the Emmys.
And a
I'm
lot
like,
of it too is like where it catches you emotionally and mentally, which I think is a huge thing with the age.
absolutely.
Like when I was with you totally, I'm like, oh, they cast this guy so old. Then now when I rewatch Matt's era, I'm like, oh, he's so old. Like you start to, as you're older and you're under, which is the case with all fiction, or
Absolutely.
you're understanding things differently. And so now I'm like, oh, Matt at the time before Ncuti was the youngest guy to play him, and he's playing it like there's so much age behind the eyes and all this stuff, and you start to really appreciate it more. And I think, as we're gonna talk about Ncuti's era with Millie and then RTD2 and everything that we're doing, I I think, if this had been back then, maybe I wouldn't like it as much as I do. I think this has hit me at a very like specific point where like I think along with probably Russell T Davies, needed some whimsy in the world. And I think it's well timed, and maybe even though I love Jodie in the role and I like a lot of that era, I think perhaps its misstep was trying to be prestige a little bit,
Yeah.
like
I
wider cameras, darker tones, like a little bit
I
off.
felt like, how do I say it? I think, as you say, watching as you get older, I feel like I have a new appreciation for all the doctors. I mean,
Hmm.
David Tennant was always great, but good God, I think, and when you see him become the 14th Doctor again, it's like the range that you have to think the Tennant Doctor has been a clone of himself. He's been this, that, he's been like, he's been 14th, like he's done it all, and he feels like so quintessentially the Doctor. And then you have Matt, who had like the burden of being the younger Doctor, so he had to like almost play much older, which he did, I think, so fabulously.
Hmm.
Of having like that dichotomy of being goofy and serious. And then you have Capaldi, who like they technically bring in to be kind of, he was supposed to be the escape from the quote unquote lover boy doctors, as I like to call them, of just like he's going to be serious. And
Yeah.
he ends up being probably more youthful in spirit in a lot of ways than all of them. And
Mhm.
he's even more like romantically deranged than all of them, which I really appreciated.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's like you all tried to make us not fall in love, you failed because
and
he's way cooler than pretty much
hello,
the man is out here with shades doing guitar solos and yelling at
so cool.
capitalists, like he's the bomb. He's awesome.
He's so cool. And I think also the thing about Capaldi, especially that I did not really understand until this particular series. Um, and I kind of grasped it, I didn't fully understand it. And it wasn't
Mhm.
until the most recent episode of Doctor Who happened, which was what was the last one? The last one,
Oh,
Legend
the
of Ruby
legend?
Sunday.
Yeah.
So Legend of Ruby Sunday, right? So that's when we find out that the big bad is Sutek. And so this is how I also know that Doctor Who is back, whether people like it or not. You can suck it. Doctor Who is back because I walked away from that episode saying, I was like, I don't even just care about waiting for next week. I want to know more. So I went all the way back to Classic Who, which I
Mhm.
never do. I still haven't, and I do need to like actually make an effort to like go through all of them. I've seen episodes here and there, but I made an episode the conscious effort like that same night. I'm going to go to Classic Who, and I'm going to watch Sutik's origin story, which was Pyramid of Mars. and it's in the Fourth Doctor era, which is Tom Baker. And so
Mhm.
I've seen clips of Tom Baker before. Everybody calls him one of the greatest. And I like, from what I've seen, I could agree. I obviously haven't seen his full story, but I mean, even him being the curator, you can tell he was
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. So I watched all 4 serials from Pyramid of Mars, Tom Baker with Sarah Jane Smith as the companion. One amazing performance. Like I was
Mhm.
like, 25 minutes is 25 minutes per episode. I said, oh, I get it. These are all timers. Like Sarah Jane, like I knew she was great from obviously New Who,
Yeah.
but in her prime, oh my God, like just
Mhm.
insane.
She was
And
the
Tom,
one. That's why you get why she's the one.
absolutely. And I mean, Tom Baker is just so captivating. But his performance is so captivating. I'm like, Capaldi pulled from all the former doctors, didn't he? It made
Yeah.
me think of he pulled from all of them, and then like I start looking it up, and you see like there's certain parts during some of his seasons he starts speaking in a Tom Baker accent, and he starts pulling back actual direct phrases used from like
Mhm.
old Doctor Who because he grew up a fan, and it's just like it's those tiny nuances. It reminds me of like I hate to be that person, guys, but it just reminds me of Kenny Omega of just bringing back like
Yeah.
Kenny and Hangman, just special type of storytellers who always get the callbacks right, always
Mhm.
get those slight gears and nuances right to make you think of certain moments. Like, I mean, real deal storytellers.
Mhm.
That's what I got from Peter Capaldi's era. And so now I'm on Jodie, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling through it, and it has nothing to do with her. Like honestly, that Rosa episode, I think, is one of the best things that Doctor Who has ever done of just really
Yeah.
taking it there. And
Powerful. Yeah.
but even when I watched it, I'm just like, I'm like, what's been missing? Like, what's missing? And I realized that the big thing that's missing it was Murray Gold.
That's huge. That's huge. 'Cause
Murray,
that
and
man's
I
making
don't
me
think
cry
I
this
didn't
season. Yeah.
realize it until this
Mhm.
season when I'm watching it while this season is happening with Russell T Davies back, but also, dude, Murray Gold was I don't think we realized until he was gone how big of a part that those big orchestras played in
Yeah.
Doctor Who of making moments feel big. Because when you listen to watch Jodie's season, the climaxes don't feel as big and without the big band and the like the anticipation of the strings. It just doesn't feel the same at all. The moments don't feel as big. Music played such a big role, I think, in Doctor Who and making it feel just eclectic and powerful. And I don't think Jodie didn't have a fair chance in her seasons because it just didn't have that. Like, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. Like, I'm not saying the music was terrible, but as far as like really taking up space in the
Yeah.
product, it really just didn't do that. So, like, that's one thing that I've really been learning from this rewatch of just simply having Murray Gold back in the fold. I mean, helped this tremendously.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it goes hand in hand with another thing about Jodie, like you mentioned, Rosa, which is, was so bold and was so, like, honest in its intentions and was, I think, because Doctor Who is always like, "Oh, is it gonna be more, cosmic or is it gonna be a history?" Generally as the 2 categories, and as far as the histories, that was one of the ones that was bold enough to say, "We're not trying to be cute about it. You're not going to find out some, our spin on what she was like or some
Yeah,
silly thing that you didn't know about her. No, it was like, here's something the doctor can't fix. Here's something
absolutely.
that no one could fix intentionally. But where you end up as moving on from Rosa is that after something like that, so early in Jodie's run, what I noticed is that in their goal, because Chibnall ran Torchwood, their spinoff that was more geared toward young adults and stuff, is that I realized, oh, the issue with Jodie's thing isn't even like a problem. It's not like you're doing your job wrong as a writer. It's just I came to this show knowing I'd feel good after everyone, and that's not the case in the Jodie run.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
also think too of just I felt like you do a episode as radical as Rosa, but like also I'm not saying like obviously the Doctor is pretty free spirited, like, but it kind of felt like they made. Oh God, I don't know how to say this. Jodie was obviously a woman, and she was obviously the first woman Doctor, but I feel like they tried to downplay that a lot to try to make her feel like the Doctor, and I feel like if you're gonna do it, go all the way for it. I feel like they tried to like dumb down a lot of her femininity. I feel like they tried to like remove a lot of like the viewpoints that comes from from being a woman, and like for her to be like how we talked about Capaldi, right? And his era of just being like illicit and bigotry, like I will like kill you guys, like absolutely not. Like I don't play that. And not saying that Jodie's Doctor tolerated that, but it's also like I'm here for fair play across the universe of like that's what kept coming up, like this fair play concept, fair play, rather than just being like no, like fuck capitalism, etc.
Yeah, like we saw Capaldi, like guy made a racist remark at Bill and he got punched on site, like immediately. Whereas like, Jodie is, I guess as I'm listening to you, it's certainly, would you say it's like can we make her one of the guys? Like, can we?
Yes, absolutely.
It's very like 1990s tomboy almost.
Because my thing is, you're already going to piss people off. And that's what I do. I mean, I feel like that's what I loved about this season, this current season, of just like, you're going to piss people off. And I think that not even just being a Doctor Who fan, I think in nerd culture, there's been a lot of times, especially growing up, not as much so now, and it's actually kind of scary, but especially growing up, I did feel like not in the sense of just accepting anything, but for a long time, it just felt like my blackness and womanhood really didn't have a space in a lot of the things I was consuming. Like, yeah, I'm a Doctor Who fan. Yeah, I'm this type of fan. Even going back to wrestling, right? Like, but the representation was never there to the point, and to the point where I don't even think I really thought it was going to be there, or even like could dream or fathom that it was going to happen. And even when I thought like it was going to probably happen, I was just like, they're going to make like whoever the first woman Doctor is, or whoever the first Black Doctor is, they're going to water it down so much to where like it barely happened or something. And so it's different. Like I think, I mean, for them to go all in on this current Doctor and be like, we're already pissing people off, let's make this show as Black, gay as possible.
Yeah, like
let's go all in.
They're so unapologetic. Yeah, it's the all inness. And like I was talking to my buddy Charlie about it earlier, who's a lifelong fan and is English and still lives over there, and like, so this is like, family institution. And he was like, RTD now feels, and I agree with this, feels like George Lucas had done Star Wars, then he comes back and he does the prequels and he pisses everybody off. But I think it's like Russell now being an older guy and having lived the last 20 years after he brought it back in 2005, it's like there's this feeling of I'm older, I've loved, I've lost, I've seen things change, I've seen the industry change, I've seen that we're able to take these swings, and that it's a different time. And he met the moment. He wasn't like, all right, let me try to make it popular again because that's why I'm being rehired. Like, they're bringing me back because the last era lost fans. And even if that's business true, it never felt creatively true. And it was smart of them to choose an actor who was like, because if you watch like Sex Education, like Ncuti he is dynamite every single time that you get a scene with the character Eric. You're like, whoa, who's that? Like, oh, I need more of that. And then combining that with Millie, and then like these steps that we've seen throughout of, Rogue being this blatantly not like it so far above subtext, it's like text in neon of their love, and or Maestro being a drag queen who is a canon god. Like, there are drag gods in Doctor Who now. And to have them say, yeah, and if those are problems for you, then you didn't love this in the first place. And we're moving on.
Doctor Who feels camp again.
That's huge.
Like
That's
that's
a
the
big point. Yeah.
perfect word of just I saw it and I'm just like, no, like it's true. Doctor Who feels camp again. Like I will say, like the Tennant era, if you look at like, even like the Smith era, damn sure the Eccleston era, like Doctor Who is camp, guys. Like it's whimsical. It doesn't make sense sometimes. It gets silly, but at the end of the day, this shit is amazing, and it's about amazing characters and their relationships and the stories between them. And I think that's what I found really exciting. And so, you know what? I think that instead of going episode by episode, tell me what was your out of all of them? There was Space Babies, there was Devil's Core, there was Boom, there was 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, Rogue, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and Empire of Death. What are your top two and your bottom two?
My top two right now. God, I'm so glad I wrote this down earlier. I'm so glad because it just removes the pressure
I didn't
from
write
my
mine down,
mind.
so I'm gonna be pressuring myself while you answer.
I am going to let me place Empire of Death in there. Spoiler alert, I'm putting Empire of Death in the middle of the pack. My top two are Boom and the Devil's Cord. And I think my bottom two are Legend of Ruby and Space Babies, said with love, said with adoration. Like someone's just got to be last. It's like when, as a Star Wars diehard, when someone's like, rank the movies. I'm like, well, first of all, you want to rank the 9 movies or the 12 movies? And then we have
Oh
a
my
nerd off.
gosh, I get like that too. I'm just like, well, actually, are we
well, I know you did your X-Men rewatch recently.
Yes.
Because I follow you on Letterboxd, and I remember explaining to a buddy who was like, what's the order of these? And I was like, all right.
So okay, so it's so funny that you said that. Please have your top two and bottom two ready. But it's so funny that you said that about X-Men is because what I'm currently doing is before me and my brother are going to go see Deadpool and Wolverine next month. Like I already made him like circle it on his calendar. So ahead of that, I'm going to rewatch the X movies again, but this time in not in chronological order. I'm going to watch them in timeline sequential order because I've only watched them in order of like where they were released. Yeah. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to actually watch them in chronological order.
That's what I just did. I did my first class. I did my rebootquels that are kind of prequels and kind of not, depending on how they felt at any given moment. And then, building up, and now I'm in the Wolverine solos, and then I'm gonna do Logan, Cry, and then the 2 Deadpools. But so top 2, Boom, Devil's Cord, bottom 2, Legend and Babies. But to me, it speaks to the quality, because even though I have the 1 through 9, including Church, including the special, I really do like all these, and I think there is a run in the middle. I'm pulling up the
you know what? I didn't ask. Are we counting? Well, I don't know why I'm asking you. It's probably my question.
Yeah.
Should we count, I guess, the specials that came before? Because
yeah, I didn't count in my mind. I didn't count the 3 14s. I counted Church. Because the goblins, like, that's their first one, and they even say that in this episode. Like, and when you go to Disney Plus, they have it. You can pull it up on its own, but when you pull up the season, it's still there.
I agree. Yeah, it's separate. It's separate.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I would say very comfortably. But there's a run in the middle for Devil's Cord, Boom, 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, Rogue. I think is one of the strongest 5-episode runs that I've seen in this show. Of just like all of those were just like, for me, I was like it just was unpredictable. Like, it was like watching, there's a lot of wrestling that's going to come up in this subliminally or not so subliminally, but
it was
okay. It's like when a trilogy, like when they throw that stipulation on the last one because they have to, or when people keep revisiting under different circumstances. Like, Devil's Cord is different for obvious reasons. Boom is different for obvious reasons. 73 Yards is straight up Lynch experimental. Dot and Bubble is like, hey, we're talking about social media. Surprise, we're talking about race. Like, and then Rogue was like 2005, but with as gay as Russell wished he could have made it back then.
Oh, guys, Rogue.
Rogue's
I listen. Okay, Rogue is top 2 for me. I would like to say that I have loved Jonathan Groff for so much of my life.
Congratulations, Jonathan.
Like I grew up a Gleek. I was a huge Glee fan.
Thank you for being brave enough to share that here with us.
Hey, listen, I used to have Claire sold out on all of their Glee merchandise. Yes. Like it was really scary. I had Glee everything. It was my favorite thing. And I was a musical theater kid, and it was a big thing. And I was like, I just would like to say Black kids being in the musical theater was not popular where I'm from. It wasn't a big thing. But I loved him as Jesse St. James. I was obsessed. Like I memorized the Spring Awakening soundtrack, even though I was like, I'm never going to make it to actual Broadway and probably never going to go to New York in my life, which is really funny now. But I have loved Jonathan Groff for so long, and he's been killing it just about everywhere that he goes. But like to see him in Doctor Who, this is my multiverse of madness. Like this is my Sweet Life, That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana.
Yes.
Crossover episode.
Yes.
This is it for me. And for
would you say that it's your Jimmy Timmy Power Hour?
Yeah. Jimmy Timmy Power Hour. Yes. Exactly.
And it was in a Bridgerton-esque setting. So that was also for you.
Please don't get me excited again. Like the vein in my forehead is throbbing, guys. I'm so happy just thinking about it. I had to go rewatch. I typically rewatch all the episodes, especially now that there's only 8. Nothing else to do. But I rewatched that episode on the same day. I was ashamed of myself.
Yeah,
I was ashamed. I said, "This makes no sense." Somebody said this when the first 2 episodes dropped of this, and they said, I don't mean this as hate, guys, but in Shooting Out, he might be too cool to play the Doctor. He might actually be too cool to be the Doctor because, like, he's just cool.
Cool as hell.
He changes his clothes, which I should never be such a radical concept, but in Doctor Who, like, some people still can't process it. Like, guys, he changes his outfit every episode. Like he changes his clothes.
Ending the season with the first outfit was almost as if the show was saying, calm down.
Calm down. Relax. Like he's giving us drama. He's giving he's such a star. And I don't think I was really worried that somebody like him taking this role, he was going to have to, how do I say it? Like dim down parts of himself, and I'm really glad that they've really allowed him to shine. Like he comes across as the biggest star, the most versatile star on that screen. He can do it all. Like he's absolutely like entrancing, and like to the point to where it really, I have to stop myself and remind myself like, oh my God, he's the first Black and queer Doctor. Like, this is crazy. I never would have been able to dream him up. Like I would have never been able to dream of him when I was in high school, thinking of like when I'm falling in love with this show. And I don't think I would have ever been able to dream up somebody like him playing that role, which is really cool. Like, it's just really cool. And so like to see him in like Rogue and like, we've all been seeing a lot of queer baiting in shows. Like, they do it all the time. And then like, just leave you out to dry at the end. And it's, it's just considered normal. I didn't know that they were going to fully pull the trigger, and pull the trigger they did. Like Russell T. Davies, this is when I realized, oh, he's not fucking around. At all. It was just fantastic. I think, like, it reminds you almost like a River song. That's a comparison that a lot of people made of just like, who's going to be this recurring companion, or just like, how are they going to do this? And I think that they did a really good job of it. So Rogue is probably that amazing. And what would be my second one? Actually, I'm gonna go with Legend of Ruby Sunday.
That's good.
Wait,
It's
no,
good.
I'm a liar. I'm a liar. I'm sorry. I'm a
You
liar.
mean Empire?
Devil's
Oh, Devil's
Court.
Court.
Going with Devil's Court.
Devil's Court rocks.
I'm sorry. I have to go Monstro.
Devil's Court rocks so hard, and
The
I'm
twist.
fortunate. Like I got a very brief drag race education last year, and I was shown a lot of highlights and a lot of All Stars highlights and things, and as for the rest of same as the rest of the world, immediately was like, who's that? Every time Jinx was involved in anything, because the comedy timing is insane. The vocal range is insane. The choices, the times when Maestro screams in the middle of a sentence, or the way that their fingers come up over the piano, like you could tell that this was a villain that we could bust this villain out once every couple of years, and it will always be fresh and it will always be insane.
That tuning fork has been stuck in my head ever since. Like that image of that tuning fork. And you know what? Like bringing this back to another wrestling comparison of just like there are some talents in the world. I think this happens with actors too, as well. Of just they do have the range to do anything that you put in front of them, and that makes them really good, of course. But when you let talented people be themselves on screen, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm currently thinking of Kazuchika Okada.
You mean
like when you
comedy genius?
Comedy genius. When you let people when you let super talented people really tap into being themselves and like showing that different side of themselves, they're undefeated. They're the best, like the absolute best to do it. Like I just think Jinx and Okada have a lot in common. A lot of people are going to hear that and be like, well, what is she talking about? Look at that, guys.
It's going to be this. You're going to tweet like this podcast, no context. And it's just 2 photos of Okada calling someone a bitch and then the tuning fork. Like these are the same in essence. But you're right. I mean, it was.
I'm going to tweet that for promo for this episode.
You should. This is a character that I feel like, God of music, cool, great base idea. Then you look at, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the DC universe. These are different worlds that Star Trek Strange New Worlds just did a musical. There are circumstances that have happened throughout different big IP of like, how are we going to get these people to sing? Or how is there going to be this musical villain? And you want to find your spin on it and connecting it to this pantheon of gods, which comes all the way around at the end, and goes back to classic, of course. I thought was so smart because and so smart to do it with song, because this is the first season. We've talked now about sort of our relationship with the show and the different eras. Modern Russell T Davies Doctor Who is way more fantasy than it ever has been, intentionally.
Absolutely.
And they talk about it in, especially in the 60th, of like the Doctor gambled and played games at the edge of the universe, and what happens then? He brought superstition to the cosmos, and now things that were legends like By Generation or legends like the way they make a legend out of Ruby's adoption, and happens when we believe something hard enough. Starting that off in the craziest way with a villain like Maestro was awesome. I mean, I remember texting people and being like, I love this whole era already because of Maestro freaking out at the end and yelling like, she has a hidden song in her heart. And I'm like, that's the season. Like, I don't know. I don't need to know what that means. I'm excited to know what that means, but that tantrum is the season. That is, like Luke Skywalker not being able to lift the X-Wing and Yoda saying, he said, I don't believe it. Yoda saying, that's why you fail. It's entirely about belief. And and we see it there with the Beatles. Like they had that glimmer of hope and they win. And that's the cheesy, it's about love, it's about feels shit that I'm here for. Sorry, I don't know if we can curse.
No, absolutely.
I'm here for that. Like
it's kind of embarrassing.
Every time a show is like, hey, love is the answer. Like people didn't like that when they did it in Interstellar. I loved that when they did it in Interstellar.
Listen, man, I think that it goes back to that thing of, is it going to be like cosmic or is it going to be history? And like this
Mm-hmm.
episode was the most beautiful blending of the two, of
Yeah.
using Abbey Road, using the Beatles to tell this story of like the supernatural, of like these
Mm-hmm.
musical gods. Like, and Maestro just was the perfect villain. I think that the Devil's Court truly, and I think it might be too early to say, but I don't care. I feel like out of the entire modern Russell T Davies, I can say definitively, like definitively, there have been at least 2 all-time episodes. At least 2 minimum.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards 3 because, and the 2 that I think is Wild Blue Yonder. I
So good.
think I think that that's like that's going to go to top 20, maybe top 15 modern Doctor Who episode. Wild Blue Yonder, crazy. Good, like guys, I might go rewatch it later. I'm not gonna lie.
You're like, I know what I'm
Catherine
doing.
Tate and David Tennant, like being chased by themselves, large versions of themselves.
Long ass arms.
You know what it reminded me of, though? You know what it reminded me of, especially since they mostly acted the episode almost completely by themselves. It reminded me of it. It felt like their own version of Heaven Sent,
I
of
like
just
that. I
of
like
just
that.
those two
Isolation,
bouncing off of each
paranoia.
other.
Yeah.
And we know that when Catherine Tate and David Tennant are just allowed to like just bounce off of each other,
Mm-hmm.
man, just that. So that one, and then the second one would be Devil's Court, and the third that I'm still a maybe on is Boom.
Boom. That was my number two. I mean, or my number one. I love Boom because a lot of what we talked about with Moffat writing 12 and how Moffat was like, hey, I've been on this show long enough. I'm going to start raging against the capitalist machine. Like the way that this comes around to combine a commentary on capitalism, commentary on war, of course, and then ultimately, when it reveals its final card, it's about the bastardization of faith. And I think
Absolutely,
people got really, every time you bring up faith, it's a thing. Um, and they were upset, like, oh, what is the doctor anti-religious person? I'm like, no, the doctor's not anti-religious person. The doctor is telling you to believe in each other, not in companies. Believe in each other,
absolutely,
not in causes, not in wars, not in these ambulances and products and algorithms. Don't believe in the algorithms. Like,
absolutely. And the
and
weaponization of religion, the
yeah,
weaponization of and the
yeah,
and the financial implications of making religion a business.
exactly. Like when he calls her, and it's one of Shooty's best line deliveries, Faith Giel. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like he's not saying that because he's making fun of her for being a believer. He's saying her because he's making fun of her for being ignorant to how she's being used. Faith girl is like calling somebody like a bootlicker in that context.
Absolutely,
And at the end, when you get that moment of the hologram of the dead father and everything that comes together, like the doctor does have to believe in things, and that comes around in the finale. When he says like your mom was ordinary and but important and extraordinary because we put importance onto the story. Then yeah, folkloric Doctor Who cosmic that's been going on since 14 with Assault makes it possible for fantasy things to happen. Like seen on Twitter already, the people that need everything spelled out, the angry trivia nerds are like, well, if she was ordinary, then how is it snowing everywhere? I'm like, because the
so
rules
think
are in flux.
I think also, guys, like let's look back at Doctor Who just as a whole, of just this trope of
Yeah.
ordinary people doing extraordinary things has happened
Hmm.
numerous times.
Yes.
I even think of, if you go back to, let's say, like Martha Jones, right, with going
Hmm.
on a tour of the earth and telling everybody the doctor's name so they can all think at the same time, doctor,
Yeah.
and bring him back and like turn back the
Mhm,
clock. Even when you think of,
mhm,
it's always been silly shit like that. Matt Smith's first episode, turning all the clocks to zero,
mhm.
of just like what, night terrors, one child's cry could be heard around the universe, or it's
Yeah,
always been
or, like,
stuff like that.
even Capaldi on his way out saying, like, that children already know the doctor's name if their hearts are in the right place and they listen close enough. Like it's it's
Absolutely.
it's a huge fairy tale. The rules are loose. Like the rules are looser now than they ever have been.
And also the rules don't exist.
And they don't
They
exist.
don't exist, guys. And
They don't
I hate
exist.
what I hate the most is I feel like you have all these people now trying to put rules on
Mhm.
what Doctor Who should be or who it is. And it's also it makes me think of just like, oh guys, gosh, you all missed all the subtext over the last couple of years. And like they're
Yeah.
actually spelling it out for you, and like you just don't get it. And I even think for me personally, Boom was really powerful because like I do identify as Christian,
Mhm.
but I'm not obviously like a big Bible thumper.
Oh, you don't
Uh,
wanna go fight? You don't wanna go fight and suit
no,
up
and
and
I think especially of just when you've watched, I think a certain religion, and this is not even just Christianity, but just all religions, organized religion, but definitely Christianity is up there.
Mhm.
Um, be co-opted in real time. Like we're
Yeah.
watching all sorts of faith systems being co-opted in real time for just money, and just like particularly for more right-leaning things, which as you know, I feel like constantly being torn in so many different directions of like, at the end of the day, like, I do identify as Christian, but also I identify as a woman. I also identify as Black. And there's so many different things that goes into those experiences every
Mhm.
single day. And so like it reminded me of why I kind of fell in love with Doctor Who in the first place, because they use science fiction and supernatural to have real social commentary on what is happening in the world now. Not the future, not other planets. They use these stories to honestly tell us things and send us warnings about where we as the human race are going as people right now. And I
Mhm.
do think that a lot of these episodes did that. I think that Boom did it from that the way talking about the weaponization of religion for the sake of capitalism. Dot and Bubble certainly did it.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were additionally drawn in thinking like, oh, this is a story about how people are too much on their phones to say, no, this is a story about racism, babes. Like,
Yeah.
and
And, like, how one can cause the other, and people
absolutely,
people think these are separate issues, and they think because it's like, if you watch that episode, it's not wrong to say it's talking about that, but it's like the show's asking you to think more. It's like, "Okay,
absolutely.
yeah, we all know social media is bad. If you've ever logged on to Twitter, TikTok, you
Have
know
you
it's bad."
seen Twitter today?
Yeah, just today, just today. Like,
I've had to I've had white people arguing at me, telling me that Juneteenth was not a real holiday. Guys, please.
yeah, like, we know it's terrible, and that but again, exactly, why is it terrible? Because of beliefs like that. Why is it terrible? Because of class. Why is it terrible? Because we're always trying to other people. And,
Absolutely.
you talked about with Jody how on your rewatch right now, how for you the womanhood has been downplayed. This was the show saying we are not downplaying the 15th Doctor's Black experience. Like,
Absolutely.
you can watch the Doctor in real time feel something they've never had to feel before, and it's
Absolutely.
terrifying. Because how does the guy that knows everything not know? Because he hasn't lived it.
Absolutely. It's a huge different thing, and people say like, "Oh, well, they didn't like his reaction in Dot and Bubble." Okay, I mean, I guess that's fair to an extent, but I do implore on people, and they're like, "It's not like the Doctor because Capaldi punched somebody in the face for calling Bill some crazy." There's a huge difference between standing up for someone who's experiencing racism and experiencing it yourself.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know. And I think that I know what that feels like to be fairly smart, fairly intelligent, like, and fairly good at what I do, and wondering, okay, everything else lines up. So what is keeping me from this certain position? Why am
Mhm.
I not getting this particular gig? Why are certain connections not happening for me? Because everything else on the list makes sense. And it's just like when that realization finally hits you of just like, oh, it's something that is, one, completely out of my control, and that, two, probably no, shouldn't have ever been a factor in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's a very startling feeling. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who just leap to anger in those points, and like they can cuss you out, etc. And like I admire those people. And sometimes I can be that person, but like in real time, like not over the internet, not
Yeah.
over Twitter, but when you are in, especially, I don't want to say professional here, but I mean the doctor saving people is his job, right?
Yeah. I
When
agree.
you're in
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
professional environment, there to do
Mm-hmm.
your job, and you realize that the only thing that's keeping me from being treated like everybody else here is the color of my skin. Yeah, that's going to make you stop, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to make you seethe internally before anything ever comes out of you. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, I felt like that was very real. Those were very real
And I
emotions.
think yeah, yeah, well said on all of that, 100%. Like that a beautiful look at it, and I love the way. I mean, I think Ncuti is incredible the whole season, but this was the first like, oh, put it in the fucking Emmy reel like that,
Oh, for
because
sure.
it's like it's an exasperated, like shocked laugh and a scream and a tear, like it's all these things because you can tell that not only do they feel othered and demeaned, but that the doctor feels for the first time in a very rare way stupid for not seeing it. Um,
Absolutely.
in the same way we do, because there are the like early signs of talking to her on the bubble device where she's like, "Oh, don't worry, like he's actually trying to help, and like we'll get rid of him after this." Like it was all there, and
I thought she was just a bitch, and then
exactly, I thought she
I
was an
think, yeah, we
idiot.
thought
Like
that of just she was just this
she's just
spoiled
so
rich kid.
sheltered, so dumb.
Yeah,
Um,
especially when she could walk her off.
exactly, and then it's also you said like I'm just trying to do the job and I'm good at this job. It's also that the doctor's job is to literally save their lives. Like I think there's like that Grey's Anatomy episode where
Yeah,
one of them has to like save the racist or whatever, or someone saves them and they
yeah,
say,
the
"I'm going to
one with
let
the
you die."
who had the swastika on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like that confronted this same concept, and for the doctor on a super heroic level, realizing, oh, there are some people whose hate is so entrenched that they'd rather risk death
yeah.
than just take a ride with me. We don't have to live together. I'm gonna drop you off, but you guys are that full of hate that you'd rather die. And I wonder if there are people like that in American
Mm,
society right now and British society,
mm,
that
mm.
would rather. I wonder if there was a world-changing event that shut us all down, where people were so entrenched in their beliefs that they would risk death. Guess we'll never
Who
find out.
knew?
Yeah,
Ding dong, ding ding ding
crazy,
ding ding ding. Who would have thought? So
insane
I
stuff.
love talking about these hypothetical scenarios.
Guess we'll never have to know. Glad I'm not
Wink,
in Doctor
wink.
Who. Yeah,
Woo!
yeah.
Wink, wink. Um, no, I completely agree. I think that yeah, I agree with all of that. I think Dot and Bubble is going to go down as a very special episode, and I think that it really addressed a couple of topics, and I think also in the sense of life in, how do I say this? If you achieve enough stature and money in life, you don't have to deal with people that you don't want to deal with.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. Of just, it's classism allows you to put yourself into a bubble, to the sense of
Yeah.
you don't have to deal with people who don't look like you or think like you, or you just don't. And that can go multiple ways, right? It's not just like white people about black people. It could be like, I know a lot of black people who don't know anybody non-black. Hell, I was one of those people until I went to college, of just like, I went to 99% black schools growing up my entire life. Have been like,
Hmm.
mostly black town, like most of my teachers were black, etc. And then I get to college, I go to this super huge school, and then I realize, oh, the world doesn't look like my neighborhood at all.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm the minority here by a landslide. Like it doesn't look, and I think that sometimes people are forced into those. Sometimes people are forced into these situations because of how much money they do have, and sometimes it's about how much money that they don't have. And I think that it's just a truth of you have to get out of your box, because by the time that you do need to survive, like we learned, like with this girl, like when the rubber met the road, she had no survival skills by staying in her box. She learned nothing by just being around people who just look like her and think like her. Growth only comes with tension.
Yeah.
Growth only comes with differences. Like, you have to be around different people to, like, I even say this in relation to like my wrestling journey of like, I know nobody would probably believe this, but I used to be a drone. I was a drone, guys. I was a drone. I was a drone.
I love the pain
I
in
was
your
one of
voice.
those people
I
who used to
was.
be like, I was one of those people who'd be like, guys, if it didn't happen on Raw or SmackDown, it's not actually wrestling and it doesn't matter. Knowing good and well, I've never watched it. I've never
Yeah.
even like looked at it. But
Yeah.
I'm just going to have this air of superiority that if I haven't seen it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And like, one, that's a whole lot of privilege, definitely American privilege. And then suddenly I start expanding my worldview of like what wrestling is, right? And like what it is all over the world. And I realized I didn't even know a tenth
Yeah.
of what this was. And I'm better for it. I'm so much smarter when I admit that I don't know things and I actually take the effort to learn. There is
Yeah.
so much strength that comes in admitting weakness. There's so
That's
much
the
strength that
spirit of this show in a lot of ways.
absolutely there's strength and vulnerability. Of strength and vulnerability, of opening yourself up to traveling and this TARDIS through time and space to new worlds, and there is strength in not in the unknown. And I think that Dot and Bubble really taught that lesson. And if people didn't get it, guys, I will say some of these episodes, I'm not going to say they were all the best. Like, I will say the writing was hit or miss this season, 100%. But some of these criticisms, like some things, if you didn't like it, you're probably a racist or a homophobe, maybe both.
It's just sometimes it's brass tacks. Like it's like there's a level of, and we're seeing this a lot in all fandoms, but there's a level of like, okay, you didn't like it. All right, you didn't like this one either. All right, what are we talking about here? Like you start to
Exactly.
it's like you've used your suspicious points are all spent, and it's like now I gotta know, like, what is the
Just
as
say
you
the
see this all the
quiet part
time,
out
it's like
loud.
exactly that. Just say it out loud. Let's actually get to the bottom of like what you're talking about. That way I can know whether you're even worth talking to. But like, and that's the thing, is that especially when they are spelling it out on different levels and in different ways and different tones, because you have your dot and bubbles and your booms, but then you go over to Space Babies and it's like it's so camp, it's so cheese and so ridiculous. Look who's talking, all that. Like it's all of that, but then it's still saying these things of like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know everything. So let's try to figure it out, accept that we don't know. Teach these literal babies that bravery is acting when you are afraid. It's not about not being afraid. And that nobody, like right from the get, cried in Space Babies, cried at the beginning of the season when he talks to Captain Poppy and is like, nobody's born wrong. I I
Oh,
was I was just immediately was like, you're so right. You're
also,
so
Space
right.
Babies being like this deep allegory for it felt like legalizing abortion was wild. Just that was the way that they told that. I know a lot of people put Space Babies towards the bottom of their list in the rankings, which is understandable for certain things. But doing that in the first episode and being so bold of saying like, oh, so you mean to tell me they bred all these children and with no plans on how to feed them or do anything with them, and they just left them here out to dry? Yeah, guys, like that's that social commentary that I look to Doctor Who for, of
Yeah.
being on the right side of history, of like that's what I come for. That's what I come to this show for.
Yeah. Even the silliest villains, like I would say maybe the silliest villain of the season are probably our alien cosplayers from Rogue. And it's like, because
Yes,
really that episode is for the romance of the relationships and all that. And the villains are silly, but in those cosplay conversations is a deeper conversation about appropriation. Like, they're
absolutely.
using the word cosplay because the character of Ruby is young and is making TV references, and Ncuti's doctor is coded as younger, and says things like babes and things like that. So they're putting it in cosplay terms, but like, oh, this alien species that shows up and is like, we're gonna pretend to be you until we've wiped you out. Like,
Colonizer,
yeah,
colonizers,
yes,
colonizers. Yes,
colonizing birds.
colonizing birds. Absolutely. I think that I think that that's the problem. And I hate to bring this back to wrestling, but we're just going to do it. I feel like now more than ever, I don't think that Doctor Who has changed as much as people thought, but I do think that people have changed. And I think that people have changed in the sense of the subtext used to be the best part of the show, in my opinion. It still is. I love digging deeper. I love, don't show me, don't tell me all the time, show me. Like, I love like lore. That's what I love about wrestling. I love lore. Don't tell me, I don't need commentary to shove it down my throat. Give me the drama in the match.
100%.
I want the lore. And that doesn't mean I need 17 interferences and 2 ref bumps. Like, no, like, give me storytelling. Like I was saying with going back to Capaldi's era after seeing Tom Baker, of just like, yes, this is what I want.
Yeah. But you know what my favorite wrestling moment was from like the last calendar year?
Well,
And not maybe not match, although this might actually be the answer for me. Moment, exactly to what you're speaking to, is Forbidden Door Kenny kicking out at 1. And the reason is because commentary freaks out and they're screaming at 1, but they don't stop to tell you the history of the move and the history of Kenny's run in Japan and the power of the move and the protected one-winged angel and Okada and what Will does. Like, they don't need to do all that. We all freaked out, and then you could have great conversations with fans and read these Twitter threads and see these montages and everything where people are like, oh, that thrilled you, here's what that means. Like,
and if you didn't know, now you want to know.
Exactly.
And,
You're like, whoa, well, he kicked out at 1. That never happens, but that's a finisher, right? So
and
what
it's
does that
even so
mean?
much other things of just like, how many people has Kenny ever let use the one wing angel, period? So like, even somebody else being able to use it signifies that, okay, this is important. Like in his timeline of lore, there's probably only like 3 guys who's ever, maybe 3, 4. I'm trying to figure out, did Okada ever use the one winged angel?
I think he did. I think he did in the 4th one or the 3rd one.
I think
I might be wrong.
he might have used it. I know Osprey has used it, Hangman has used it, and I believe Ibushi has used it.
Okay.
And all of these people are obviously like so central to like who he is in his evolution at each stage of his career. And so I think it's one of those things of just like, as we're talking right now, it's very clear, like, oh my gosh, these episodes of Doctor Who, they had all this subtext, but it's just like, you get on Twitter and it's just like, well, I don't want to dig deeper. I don't want to think.
Yeah, like we're seeing that right now with like, so you're telling me that Ruby's mom was yeah, we are telling you that. But like, what does it mean? Doesn't mean you have to like it. There's a very different thing.
100%,
like, if you're
absolutely.
like, if you're like, that's not for me, great. But that's not for me, better have understanding attached to it. Don't just cross your arms and just like, because like there are all types of things that are not for me that I still try to get, because it's just as hard to make a bad thing as it is to make a good thing.
100%.
Like same as like a bad match. Like, they still made their towns. They still went out there. It's still like, you could have great guys that never click, and that just happens.
It does
But
happen.
yeah, but like in terms of like Doctor Who and like the storytelling, it's like they're trying to do something in earnest, and give it its room. Like I'll this is a great time. I'll bring up the thing that I'm unsure about. And it's not a bad, it's not a criticism, it's not a dislike. It's just that it made me feel like, oh no, really? Ooh, interesting. And that's the ending of the Doctor and Ruby for now. It was the goodbye doesn't bother me. Great, emotional, incredible acting. I think Millie is amazing in these last two. Um, and goodbye, and then I'm gonna go meet my father. Love that. And then her saying to the Doctor, you don't do that." Love that. Interesting. But then she calls him out about Susan, about never going back. She says she loves him, and then he doesn't say I love you too, and he doesn't. I thought for sure, not saying I love you too, fine. That's very in character. But I thought for sure that when, Ruby with both of her moms and her grandma were looking, I thought he was gonna pop back out. I really did. I thought he was
I
gonna regret
did.
it. I or something, or that he would go see Susan, or that or he would want to look at baby pictures with them, or like. But here's the thing. Even though I had all those thoughts, Shooty's crying, and
He was.
I think that's the point. So it's like whatever brings Doctor and Ruby back, because we know that Ruby's in season 2. It might be regretful, and I think that's good, because the grief journey. The reason why 14 is allowed to exist at the same time is because 14 will still become 15. That's the crazy bi-generation stuff. But 14 is on a therapeutic retirement journey that 15 is the result of. And so I'm wondering now if it's like 15 is trying to put that into action. Like, it's one thing to go to therapy, but it's another thing to be out and
That's
use
100. I
use
never
what you learned.
experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, like now I got to use what I talked
Apply your
about.
learning. Apply
Exactly.
it.
And I think that those tears were the Doctor saying, "Fuck, I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again." And maybe he'll be having tea with Grandma Sherry soon, hopefully.
She finally got her cup of tea. I think that also, I'm not gonna lie, I still don't quite understand the bi-generation concept. I love it. It's one of those things, like, it happened,
Yeah.
and I was like, this rules. I have no idea
The
that this
way
happened, but
the
this
way
is
it was
amazing.
explained the way it was explained to me, and I guess the novelization of the episode makes it clearer. I
Okay.
haven't read it yet, but it was told to me, is that no matter what, Shooty does come after David. So Shooty is next sequentially and has already gone through the healing journey of 14 being retired with Donna. But bi-generation grabs one of your future selves out of time and puts them next to you. So whenever
Oh,
14 does die, whenever that is, however that is, they will become energy and snap back to the giggle and guarantee that Shooty exists. So Shooty existing guarantees Shooty exists. And so you end up in a loop of 15. And
oh.
then so that's the way that's the best explanation I've
I
heard.
I
But
think
yeah.
I'm just gonna have to get the novel. I'm just gonna have
Yeah.
to get that novel. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be too much. Probably like what, $10 on Amazon or something. It's
Yeah.
not gonna.
I think it's like a Target exclusive or something. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'll find it.
But yes, but again, like you said, these are things that matter but don't.
I
Because
think
here we
that was
are.
the perfect segue into, obviously, let's talk about the finale, because
Yeah.
I think we've grazed upon just about every episode except for 73 yards, and I would
Mm,
like to say I think that maybe that's a great segue here, because 73 yards comes back up here, but it kind of doesn't.
mhm.
Listen, I think the 73 yards could have easily been an all-timer a Doctor Who episode if they stuck the landing.
Mm.
I felt like the ending was so anticlimactic to the point to where it kind of makes you feel like, what are we doing here?
Mhm.
And even, I'm not gonna lie, I still don't feel like we've gotten a lot of clarity. I still don't, like, especially
It's
with this
interesting,
episode.
right? Like,
Yeah,
you get the idea here that we know she doesn't know, but you get the idea that she's starting to remember? Like, the immediate, like, how much is meters to yards, and then the doctor being
yeah,
like, "How do you know
67
that?"
meters. Yeah.
And she's like, "I think I just do." That was like, okay, maybe it's like you will know it, but it's sort of like, yeah, 73 yards is interesting because it's like you get all this character development that the character doesn't remember. and it's almost like that it's okay, that it's for us, not the plot. Like, I know what Ruby's made of, but Ruby doesn't yet. And I don't know if that's yeah, it's weird. It is weird. And
I
how
agree.
much of it is TARDIS physics? Like adding in the TARDIS physics to it makes me want to rewatch it.
And her being so powerful to like bring the like make the TARDIS physical, make it snow. Also, the TARDIS being a remembered TARDIS and using the TARDIS from Tales of the TARDIS was actually
Mm,
pretty cool. And it
yeah.
makes me think that they just released a Tales of the TARDIS episode this week about
Hmm.
pyramids of Mars. Are you familiar with the Tales of the TARDIS concept?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I know they have a couple of the classics that are
Yes.
in them, and yeah.
So they did one this week. I need to go watch it, and that's another thing I'm probably gonna go watch tonight. But they did it, and it's all about Pyramid of Mars, which is Sutek's origin story. So I think it's going to feature Tom Baker, hopefully. And I heard a rumor that there might be like a cameo or something from Ncuti or and what's Millie, but
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna watch it. But that's essentially the set that they used for this remembered TARDIS
That's
that
cool.
was in the
It's really
finale,
great. The
which was
small
super.
moment of like taking it in and seeing like the drawer that has all the screwdrivers, and of course Mel stopping to look at the jacket and everything was really cool.
Speaking of Mel,
Yeah.
I would like to say so. Like as somebody who didn't grow up watching like a lot of classic Who, I wasn't really
Mhm.
familiar with her until she reappears in at Unit. At the in the Russell T Davies 2 era. I have been so impressed with her,
Mhm.
but especially I think in these last two episodes of like, oh, she's A plus. Like,
Mhm.
especially in this episode, I think like of her of being able to communicate so clearly. I think with just her emotions that she like, she was like possessed.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. And these last two episodes, but especially this finale, Mel was incredible. And to the point to where give me this unit spinoff. I need
Yeah.
a unit spinoff. And I know that they've tried spinoffs before. They tried it with Class. Shout out to everybody who remembers Class. Um, they
Yeah.
tried it with Class.
Class,
Obviously,
Sarah
Torchwood was a hit
Jane.
for a while. Saying Sarah Jane, was a hit for a while. But I think it's time, like, let's go for it. Give us a unit spinoff with all these.
Especially with Rose Noble. Like
Hello.
she's so right there, and like you get that little like doing a Rose Noble centered project at Unit would be so smart, I think, because there's always the lingering detail that her uncle is David Tennant, but like he doesn't need to be there. But it just adds like that's such a Doctor Who thing of like, well, how would you know that? And then everyone could be like, oh yeah, her uncle is the Doctor, so it's like it makes
Literally.
sense. Yeah.
And and like even like her mom is freaking Donna Noble, like like
Yes.
pop in
Yeah.
everything. Even and then like her mom is Sylvia Noble, who I think is one of the underrated characters,
So
in the
funny.
franchise of,
That's
you
another
know,
thing too, like, bringing up Sylvia after bringing up Mel, I'm so glad you said that because not a lot of franchises allow their older stars to shine, but especially older
absolutely.
women. Like, you don't
Oh my
get
gosh, yes.
badass old ladies. You just don't. It doesn't happen a lot, and
Absolutely.
it should happen more because it's so cool.
And up until this point, only one person has ever gotten that distinction, which was Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
Which I mean, of course, hello. And then like, even like Catherine Tate, like, it's only been like what 15 years since her seasons, but her coming back of just I do appreciate them like utilizing women as they get older because that's not always the case. Men always get listen, this is the thing in wrestling too. Men always get called back in their 50s, 40s. Like, you want a Royal Rumble spot? Like, you want this, you want that. Like,
You want a
do you
Royal
want
Rumble
do you
spot?
want to main event this Saudi show?
Yeah. Did you wanna bury Kevin Owens at
And
Fastlane?
hey, men always get those calls, but very rarely do women get to like tell their stories and rewrite their stories on their own terms. I think that's why like obviously I'm not a huge WWE fan at all, but I was really happy to see Trish come back last year and have like an extended run, just because like she didn't have a lot of those type of opportunities, like to like
Yeah.
do. some of those things when she was an active, wrestler, in her first run. So it was really cool to see her come in at her 40s and just kick ass. So it's really cool when you get to see like women, even in their older age, like get those opportunities. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciated Mel in this season. I hope that we get a unit spinoff. I think Kate Stewart has been really great. I think she's always pretty great. Also, Kate got her a man. They kind of threw that in. There was so much happening. This finale was a lot. Like this finale, a lot was happening because I just thought about that. I said, "What? Kate was holding hands with that man."
Kate was like, "Look, he's strong. He's loyal. He's dedicated to the right things."
She said, "If the world was ending, y'all thought I was dying alone? Me? Absolutely not." She said, "Absolutely not."
I respect it.
There was just so much happening, which goes to, before I really get into this finale, guys, I don't think that Doctor Who is the right show for 8 episodes. I just don't. I think from a character, don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm as hard on it as others. I think some people, I feel like I don't know 15 and Ruby and I have no emotional connection with them. Shut up. Yeah. Anywho, but I do think that some of the criticism is valid of just, there's a lot that was skipped over. Like even when you go into like that first, what was it, first or second episode, Ruby's like, "Oh, I've been with you for like 4 months." I'm like, we're like on episode 1
There's
or 2.
A big jump, and to your point, I'm with you. I'm not like you, not angry, I don't feel like I don't know them. Certainly not. I definitely do feel like I know them. But someone worded it well, and I wish I had screenshotted it so I could have said who, but it was there. It's missing a touch of the domestic. Like there were times when there were several times when 11 was a nuisance on their couch, on Amy and Rory's couch, or the way that the Doctor knew about Clara, the 12 knew about Clara dating Danny, and like that her life became his life. They, as best friends, shit was going on. I think even extending it to 9 or 10 episodes,
they were always
in,
like, you got to think, in Rose's business, like between
Rose's mom, and
you had Jackie Tyler, like they're always in their flat.
There's
like
a little bit like, if even one more episode, or maybe 5 minutes more in each one, like I loved every time we saw Ruby's mom and grandma, because that's a part of it. I think in season 2, I would love to see, like, let's see Ruby playing keyboard at concerts again, like we know she does, or let's see what Ruby's friends are like, because we know she has friends. She has a band. I would, just little things like that help things breathe a bit more. It never angry bothered me, but it got more obvious toward the end, like things like the Doctor being like, the glove, like, this was from our first adventure. It's like, yeah, I know it was right there. Like,
it was like last month.
I don't feel like it was that long ago. And part of it was like, he's acted like that's the kind of move you bust out in a 3rd season. Like the glove from our first adventure. It's like, yeah,
dude,
that
was in May. We're in June. Like, relax. I agree. I think that it's one of those things to where I feel like they didn't really flesh out Ruby's life outside of the Doctor. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like, what is she, 19? That makes sense. To an extent, but I think in a lot of ways, like, that's almost too much like Rose, because like the thing about Rose is that she didn't have a life outside of the Doctor. She hated her life outside of the Doctor. Like, don't get me wrong, she loved her mom, but she didn't want to be there. And I think that was one of the things with Ruby, of just trying to differentiate her from like some of the other companions. And I don't think that they built out who she was outside of the Doctor a lot, but it's hard to do that in 8 episodes. And also, speaking of 8 episodes, a lot of that is due to it being on Disney Plus now. And another thing about being on Disney Plus, it felt very similar to Marvel and Star Wars. That finale, like, very down to the dust, felt very not in-game, Infinity War. Everybody becoming like, it felt very Marvel-esque. And I I don't think it was a particularly a bad thing. It's more so of
No.
like, oh my gosh, they have money now.
Like they were spending, yeah, and
Like they are spending.
they showed off because at the end of Legend of Ruby Sunday, when Sutek is revealed and it's the full, big dog, alien spirit, big god, I was like, oh, that's awesome. But I'm sure we're gonna be using Susan Twist as this ghoulish version. I'm sure that's more what we're gonna see now in the finale. And they were like, nope, we're
Nope.
showing the dog every time that Sutek is doing anything. We're
Like
showing the
they're
dog. We're
showing,
showing the dog in the time stream.
and you have to think when the first episode of like Tennant being back as the Doctor. I remember when we saw the Star Beast, when we saw like the sonic screwdriver with the screen, we were like, oh, they got money now, just because like we saw like it make like a little like what a grid. He
Yeah,
used those
yeah.
sonic,
The
and we're
little
like, oh, they
yeah.
got money now.
The shield.
We had
Yeah.
no idea of just like, oh, they have a budget, and in a lot of ways, I think that's what a lot of people are missing. I think that's the part of nostalgia of just. I think that is a part of being camp. Doctor Who being camp was a lot of times like, guess what? These shitty graphics and these terrible prosthetics, they're weird, but they're ours, right? Like they're ours. They're our favorite thing. It's something that it's our thing. It's our thing. It doesn't have to be the most high tech thing in the world. It's Doctor Who. But now this camp thing is super high tech now with some of the best graphic design and work and special effects, the whole 9 yards, to really make this like, oh, this is like a legit sci-fi show. And I do think a lot of people are missing like that element of just like the imperfections, made it quirky. In a lot of ways, it's the production is so polished now to where it does feel kind of weird. Not bad, but it does
Just like
feel
surprising. Like, whoa, like we can do all this.
But
Yeah.
what did help, though, I think what did help is going back to it, bringing back Murray Gold, is because, like, that's one of the things, like, when moments are happening, you're like, wow, this looks so much better than it would have, 15, 20 years ago. But but at least it sounds the same. It sounds the same, and it has those same, like, type of builds. And I do think that that's one thing one place where, like, I think it really helped. But sure. I noticed a lot of Marvel and Star Wars type.
And the fact that like it is. It's way more bombastic and it's way more cinematic. But yeah, like you're right though about like the camp and the music and the things that are consistent ground it, because when they start their plan in the finale and it's like oh, surprise, aha, it was a fake out, hook and the rope and everything, and we're gonna yank this thing. And actually at first I was like, you guys gonna fly away with this thing? It's a god. And then I was like, oh wait, no, they're just gonna dematerialize. Okay, forgot what show I was in. Then when they faded away and went into the time stream, I was like, oh, this is really big. Are they gonna like fight this thing in space? Like this might be maybe a little bit too movie. And then the Doctor's like, because death plus death equals life. I was like, yeah, this is still Doctor Who. I was like, because I don't know what the fuck that means, but I love it.
I know, but it keeps the people going. I think about this finale, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I don't know how to feel about it yet. And I think it's because it wasn't bad, but it wasn't what I was expecting. For Ruby's mom to just be some ordinary person, like, don't get me wrong, I get that to an extent. Like, ordinary people do matter, but it's like, y'all almost like destroyed all of human creation.
Yeah.
Like, let's be for real. And also, with this whole thing about her in a hood and all these things for like the 73 yards thing, that's where we're going. Like, I don't think we ever really got clarification still on like who exactly that was and why it was happening. Like, I don't think that like, was it her mother? Like
in 73 yards?
No, I'm talking about in the finale.
Oh, the actual, like the actual woman pointing and everything.
Yes, because I still don't quite believe that the person following Ruby and 73 yards was Ruby. I still don't feel like fully clear on what happened here. And I'm not sure if they, and this is coming from me, somebody who like watches every episode twice. So if I, at least twice. So if I don't feel clear on it, the casual grifters, they hate it. They hate it. Because at least I'll just say, like, I just don't know what's happening here. They'll be like, because I don't understand, this is the worst thing that ever happened. Cancel it now.
And it's like anytime, wrestling's come up, but Star Wars too, me being a big Star Wars guy, like the second that we introduced Ruby Sunday and did a Who Are Her Parents thing, I was like, oh, I've heard this song before. Like, I was like, here we go, baby. Here we go.
What?
I'm back.
We've heard that before. We've heard that before. And in Star Wars, the last time that happened, it was also deeply unsatisfying.
And it was deeply controversial both ways. Both answers.
Rey being Palpatine's daughter to this day, I think is one of the worst things that has ever happened in Star Wars.
It is.
And that's saying a lot for a franchise that had Jar Jar Binks.
It was extremely controversial. And we're not going to do a 3-hour show on that right now because I will. But it's also, to keep it Doctor Who, it's also Russell probably having watched the Impossible Girl storyline and being like, I want to do one of those. Because we also went through this with Clara. Why is Clara everywhere? Why is she in these different periods? Who is she?
And that was polarizing.
Yeah, it still is. Yeah.
I think that Clara is a lot more appreciated in hindsight by Doctor Who fans.
Yes.
But if anybody was there during that time, like, guys, like, no, it was very polarizing.
People, I mean, you're seeing it already happening. It's always revisionist history. Whatever was previous sucks until the next thing. I've already seen people tonight. They're all like, we miss Moffat. We miss him.
I will say,
I love Moffat. I love him.
The Stephen Moffat history rewriting happening currently right now is crazy. Because now everybody's like, Moffat is the greatest writer of all time. Nobody understands Doctor Who like Moffat.
It's like, no, I was there when he was doing Matt Smith and running Sherlock at the same time. You guys were haters. You were haters.
You guys were
haters. You were haters.
I was there. I think y'all were not saying this. You said that Stephen Moffat needs to give up the pen. But no, actually, you said he needed to give the pen back to Russell.
Russell could not be touched at the time.
It couldn't be touched, and that he's the only one that truly understands how to write Doctor Who. I remember, even with Sherlock, I'm just saying that Moffat and Mark Gatiss, they all have a lot going on. And I just feel so unsatisfied with both because eventually everybody started hating on Sherlock too. I remember.
And so now we have this, and then whatever happens next season, we'll look back on this and hopefully, it'll probably get more clarity. We'll see what happens because Ruby's story isn't over, blah, blah, blah. But it is funny the way that all works in terms of like things it's always the next thing. It happens in wrestling too. Every era sucks and it was always better before. And then we get to the next thing and then we're like, oh, actually that was good. We didn't appreciate it while we had it. And that's the doom of fandoms. But yeah, I think, I understand a lot of what you're saying about like the lack of clarity and like, how are these things connected? Because it does, I like the Ruby mom reveal on its own because I think it ties in with what they've been saying about folklore and stories and belief and how much it was very meta too. Like we put the importance on her and that's why she's important.
I like that aspect.
Yeah,
of it.
That I like and all that works for me. I'm excited to see where she goes and how Ruby could change. Like she's done these things, but it's like, can she continue to do these things? Like, does she, does she initiate, re-teaming with the Doctor? Does the Doctor initiate it? Does something bring them together? Is Ruby now an enemy of the gods? For they destroyed a god. Doctor Who killed God. Like they yeeted God into the slipstream of time space tonight. And it was just a casual day for the Doctor. So who knows what happens, but I think overall I was mostly in for the finale. I did like it. Definitely not my favorite of the finales that we've had. It's hard to top I think, a couple of the Matt Smith ones, and it's hard to top the Capaldi ones for sure. But
Absolutely.
I think for a good like first big villain, like yeah, it's great. And then I'm sure season 2 we'll go back to some hits. We'll do a Dalek one. We'll do a Cyberman one. This feels like how Jodie's first season didn't do any classics. And then this one obviously ended on a classic, but they mostly didn't.
You know what though? What I really liked about this season is that they're bringing back they brought back a lot of old villains from previous seasons without recycling the same old. Because I do think that Jodie's season, while by the time they brought back in the Daleks, I think a lot of people were like really checked out. I think that they kind of like checked out, and so I think I do really like what this season has done as far as I don't want to say forcing, but I think that there's a much stronger suggestion of new Who fans to go back and actually watch some of the classic Who films and not for episodes. I think that there's a big, because I feel it. I feel like that personal urge of like, okay, maybe I do need to go watch some of this. Like even if I don't, have seen every episode, I do need to watch some of this and become more familiar with the Doctors who came before. And I think that they're making the Doctor's experience a lot more linear from Hartnell to Gatwa, rather than Eccleston to Gatwa, because I do think that for a while I did kind of feel like everything that happened 1 through 8 wasn't really acknowledged as much until obviously we get to like I would say like around Capaldi, and being able to do that twice upon a time episode, with the first Doctor. But I do think that there's a much bigger emphasis right now on connecting the originals and the modern, which I think is really cool as far as creating lifelong fans of, because at the end of the day, Doctor Who is something that you're supposed to grow with, and it's supposed to grow with you. So many people became fans as kids, the kids. Half the doctors that we know and love, they became fans as children. I think, what was it? Is it Peter Capaldi who has the letter that he wrote to like the newspaper saying that he wanted to be the Doctor one day or something? Like when he was a kid.
And David Tennant, and then is married to Georgia Tennant, whose
Georgia
dad
Tennant.
is Peter Davison, who was the 5th Doctor. And I remember somebody asked Peter Davison one time, "What's the best gift a fan ever gave you?" And he said, "Grandchildren." And I was like, that fucking rocks. I was like, that's so good.
You can't beat that. So yeah, I did like that. And I think what else did I like about the finale? I said that I really like Mel. I do really, I just loved her performance. I think that just in Ncuti and Millie, they have great chemistry. I will say this, and I think that this might be me being picky, but I don't care. This is my show. I did not like how they treated Ruby's adopted mother after she found her birth mother.
Like just integrating her pretty quickly?
Not even just that. It felt more so of just like, I need to find like my mom. I need to know who she is. And she loved me and she cared for me. Not saying that any of those things are not true. But I do think that I'm not sure if they were sensitive enough to like the fact that she was always loved and taken care for and had like, like a mother who literally stood behind her the entire step of the way. And then even like, I think that it would have been nice to see her birth mother have a moment with like, her adopted mother and at least saying thank you. And
or like a classic, like a lot of movies and TV with adopted characters, you get that scene, which like is a trope, but it's a great trope of like, hey, never forget, like this doesn't change anything. You're my mom,
Yes, and I feel like I needed to see that because you have Ruby coming up to this woman and said, "Thank you for loving me and keeping me safe. You kept me safe, And I'm just like, yeah, kind of, but like this woman actually kept you safe your entire life and gave you like completely. And I would have loved to see a moment, like of course, like she holds hands with both of them, but
and that's the time thing too, like 5-10 more minutes. you know?
Absolutely. And I do think like, hey, there is a thing of just we all at least I would say like in black communities, we talk about this a lot of times, like when like black kids are adopted into white families of always feeling othered. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it does work in the same way, for Ruby as well, of
Right,
just like,
right,
obviously people love you, but there's just certain shared cultural experiences and like it's just certain things that they won't be able to understand about you and how you move throughout the world. Like obviously the power differential is completely different just due to like, whiteness, but at the same time, like there are obviously parts of her that she was never going to be able to feel like, with an adopted family with just about anybody. But
right.
I do think, like you said, maybe just 5 extra minutes and not
Especially
even just
because we know that Ruby's
5.
mom is a extremely experienced foster parent. Like
Absolutely.
she has Ruby permanently, but she's also had all these kids and everything. So it's like,
As far as person that you would want to come take your kid in, like she's the best,
yeah,
you
I
know?
agree with you. Like this is probably the biggest TV example I could think of, but I was a big This Is Us fan, and like that's so key to Sterling K. Brown's character Randall, his arc of being in a white family and everything, and having those conversations. And yeah, you need a little bit of that breathing room. I'm curious as Ruby pops up again if that will be later tension or later just questions of like, now she's got to split her time between her mom, her grandma, her bio mom, and potentially her bio dad, like, and the doctor. Like, is it all these things of like, what is her life? And I think that's
And also,
interesting.
what
And
is she doing outside of these things, outside of just these people? Like, does she
yeah,
want to go
like,
to
are you being
school?
a teenager? And
Does
I
she
wonder,
want
to
to have
your
a
point,
job?
like, I wonder if the kindness and like the stuff with her biological mom, if making I wonder if Russell was trying to say something about how we don't support teenagers that have teen pregnancies, like, because they are like, she was only 15, and they say that like twice, and then they
Oh,
say,
absolutely.
like, I think that was also part of it, like, but then I also would have liked Ruby to maybe say it, like, you were just a scared kid, and you did what you could, and you were just, so again, those little things where it's like, in a perfect world, if episodes, that's what I wish more shows in general would just embrace, like, it is streaming. It is not cable. We do not have to meet our hours. We do not have to meet our quarter hours. No one gives a fuck. Make episodes as long or as short as you want. Like,
Especially for a finale. Like,
yeah,
my thing is, you've already stretched it because I think episodes had already been like, what, 48 minutes? And so they stretched this one to
yeah,
57. Take it to 60 and give us what we want. Damn
yeah.
it. Like, I
Go
just,
the last little bit.
yeah, that did make me feel some type of way. I will say, like, I just felt like they could have spared her, her adopted mother, just something. Like
Yeah,
I just felt like,
she's so good. She's such a great character and such a great
absolutely.
actor.
And she's so
Yeah.
supportive too, of just like genuinely supportive. And we've gotten to see her do so much range, I think, between
Mhm.
like, 73 yards and other things. So that was one of the things that I think I didn't like. But what I did find probably the most interesting about the finale for me was who the hell is Mrs. Flood?
It's creepy,
Who
right?
I will say,
It got
out of
real creepy.
everybody, now out of everybody, like Sutek was big bad, like I see you, I feel you, whatever. But
Mhm.
she scares the shit out of me. Like when she got in that bed, when I
Uh-huh.
said she's gonna kill her. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Because it's like when we first met her, she broke the fourth wall and talked straight to us and like told Ruby to go. And I was like, oh, she's a good character. Maybe she's like a older Time Lord or like
I
whatever.
thought she was Susan
Yeah,
at
or
first.
Susan. Yeah, or Susan. Like she seemed to be an encouraging presence. Then when she's alone in the last one, she shifts and is like, well, we don't always get what we want. I was like, what the fuck? And then in this one, she starts talking about her own plans. Like, oh, this ruins my plans or my designs or whatever. And I'm like, are you the master?
In the
Or
it's in the eyes. Like the
yeah,
eyes when she like
yeah.
it's like she stares daggers.
Or does she remember the master's stuck in a tooth, in the toy maker's tooth,
Oh
and
yeah.
then it gets taken at the end of the giggle. Like,
Mhm.
does Mrs. Flood have the master? Is something like, is this the
Well,
season 2 plot? Like,
another theory that I saw is that she, especially with in the closing scene with like the hood and everything, is that she's the trickster god.
Okay, yeah.
Because I guess in the classic Who, that the hood, like the one she wore, like the snow hood, that's what the trickster wore.
Okay.
And so it's like, that's a theory that she's one of the gods alongside Sutek and Maestro. And also, like, I will say the thing, some people don't like it, some people do, and I think some people just don't know if they like it or not, which I think is also completely fair. It's only been 8 episodes and it feels like the whole franchise is rebooted. So I do think like sometimes it's necessary. But the addition of the supernatural into Doctor Who opens up an entire new world of possibilities, and to the point to where this could be really good or this could be really bad. Because today made me really think. When I was watching the episode and I was seeing the similarities, I said, do you think that godforsaken mouse is going to try to do a crossover, some of franchise crossovers, now that they have all those titles under ownership?
I don't think they'll ever do franchise crossover outright because they they'll never do anything with Star Wars because it's so lock and key and like very tight. It has guidelines, but like, is it possible that I mean, in comics, it's free reign. There's been Doctor Who, Star Trek comics. This season even confirms that is loosely canon because Ruby says in Space Babies, Ruby says like Star Trek, and then Ncuti says like, oh yeah, we have to visit them sometime. And so like there's a little bit of that. Obviously Disney doesn't own any of that, but I don't think we'll ever see that, but I do think it's possible that like maybe 15 literally goes with Ruby to Disney World. I would not be surprised if something like that happens, like more in-world stuff, or like, maybe like Guardians of the Galaxy references, like things that would make sense. I could see Disney trying to get in, but right now that they're only footing the bill, I'm not too worried. But yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what I could see is, I think that I could see them doing a crossover as kind of like a distraction. So remember in Wild Blue Yonder, at the beginning, where like the Doctor and Donna just kind of like run into like Isaac Newton?
Yeah.
And like
the cold open. Yeah.
Like, I just have this vision in my mind of like Ncuti like running through the corridors on the Death Star, and quickly, like just running through the corridors. That's it. That's all I can see. Right.
And then music.
And then suddenly music.
Or like, if they want to do fantasy, like, is it possible that like, maybe an episode starts, they're in what looks like, an old setting, castles, whatever, and they run there's a girl running, and then they look and the girl lost her shoe and it's a glass slipper. And then it's
now, I will say you should probably write that down and tweet it, because I'm almost positive I could see that happening.
Like something like that, like, because everybody's got a version of the princesses, or with any of them, like, 15 and Millie are by a tower and then Rapunzel's hair comes down, and like some shit like that. I think is because they also did that great cold open this season with the butterfly effect, and like how it works, and then Ruby turns into a reptile for like a minute.
Absolutely
loved that. So those types of things I think would be fun. Maybe like they meet King Arthur. Like that's the thing, is that we've touched on it in the past eras, like 12 met Santa Claus, things like that. But now it's like, okay, goblins, gods, musical sequences, like there's room here now that maybe the Doctor does meet an outright wizard, if that's Merlin or whoever else, and then for the first time literally just can't explain it, like, and how frustrating that might be for the character.
I would like to say that I am still have my bid in for a Sherlock appearance. I know that this is very 2014 of me. This is very 2014 of me, of everybody. Like, I remember, like, y'all weren't there, guys. Like, if you were on Tumblr during that time, #SuperWhoLock, you weren't there. And I do
So you mean specifically Benedict?
No, dead ass.
Yeah.
like so
I love it.
serious of just like people used to like that used to be the thing. And then I remember when Matt Smith came in, it was like, I'm Sherlock Holmes, and I thought it was going to be that, but they were just joking. They were
Yes.
just joking, like, no, I'm not joking anymore. Let's make it happen. Like, let's make it happen. You know, like just have him. I know you have him here on set doing something for Marvel. Just have him
Yeah.
pop in on, like, you know, the Doctor Who lot. Just one good time. Him, or I'll take Martin Freeman too.
Yeah.
No problem, guys. Like, give me something. Like, if we're spending the big bucks, like if we're really going there, if we're really going to do it, let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
let's do it. It doesn't have to be long. I just need it. I'm probably wrong, completely wrong, but you know, hey, just putting it out there in case it happens. I just, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want
You're like,
personally.
I'm trying to make childhood dreams come true here.
Oh,
That's the
literally.
business I'm in.
When I went to London last year for the first time I went last year, because I went twice. The first time I went last year, I did all of the things that I've always wanted to do, like all the things I always wanted to do. I went to the Wax Museum. I went and found a TARDIS. I went to the Sherlock Holmes Museum. Like, guys, I'm so die hard about this. So that's how I feel. What are your closing thoughts on this season?
I
And what
think
are you most looking forward to for next season?
I think it's such an electrifying start. Overall, I'm really pleased with it. I think you said it best with like camp is back. I think optimism is back, whimsy. I love how unabashedly progressive the show has always been, but especially is now. I think this is probably the strongest like first go for any of them for me personally
Really?
since Matt. Well, since Matt, I just mean like for an actor, not for a
Okay.
season.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like immediately meeting Matt and Karen Gillan as
Oh yeah.
11 and Amy, I was like, whoa, I love them, and I grew to love everybody after, but this was that whoa, I love them, and it just took me by surprise, and so I think overall very very strong. We're never gonna get out of the we wish we had more time, but like we talked about this a little bit off air, the fact that season 2 is wrapped and is getting ready is like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. It's never going to be a long wait, and it's going to feel like a cohesive run. And then for season 2, I think we actually have a great, easy answer here, which would probably be my answer anyway, which is our new companion. The fact that it's going to be a team of 3 instead of a team of 2 with Verada Sathu returning, which is interesting
Yeah.
as a different character question mark from Boom joining full time on Team TARDIS. It's like, why does she have again? We're in the why is it that face again, which is like a thing we've had happen like 3 times on the show now.
And it always ends up good, you know. I feel
Yeah,
like
it's
whenever
always a
that
fun
has
reveal.
happened,
Yeah,
like you got to think Peter Capaldi. We saw him for the first time in
Pompeii.
Pompeii.
Yeah,
Pompeii. So it's interesting of
and
like, you
so
know,
Capaldi's face and 10,
Tinny's
14 and 10
face,
having the same face.
Clara.
Clara, yeah, why is she in these different settings? And so, will this new companion remember Boom? Will they be a
Mhm.
descendant of that character or an
Martha
ancestor
too.
of
Now
that
that I think
character?
about it, Martha was as
That's
well
right.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
Martha Karen Gillan's in an earlier one too.
yep,
Yep.
she's in Pompeii.
Oh, yeah, they both are. Yeah, that's right.
He's in Pompeii. You know, I
That's
feel
right.
like that used to be the thing. Like, you know, you have to do like an audition almost to see, like, can you really
Yeah.
be, you know, down as a doctor or a companion? So I do love that we're getting back to that of just like, you know, getting a little teaser and watching people like, you know, become different. I'm interested to see where Ruby ends up. And like I said, I want to know who Miss Flood is.
Mm-hmm.
She like that got me. And also, can we see Maestro again? Like,
Would love if Maestro was recurring. Maestro and Rogue should be throughout the whole era, just in different ways.
I would love to see going back to like that Cinderella concept that you said, and I could see that happening because, like, you know, imagine like just building this arc with Rogue of just constantly every time he finds him again, he loses him again.
Mm,
And all he has is like one thing left. Like, you know, how he had the ring left, or like, you know, who knows? This shit.
yeah,
Actually, it was almost kind of like a Cinderella story. Who knows? Like, you know,
a
and
little bit.
Yeah.
And
So
also, what is Rogue? I would love it for Rogue's return to be like, what are you like when you're not doing a job? Because it's like certainly, I mean, it would be cool if you dress like this all the time, but I'm assuming you don't. Because this is a Victorian disguise, and so it's like this futuristic gunslinging bounty hunter who loves to listen to pop music and play Dungeons and Dragons. Like, what are you actually like? Like, I would almost like an episode that positions Rogue as the A character and the Doctor as the B character. Like
mhm,
let's open with Rogue, and then 10 minutes go by, and then all of a sudden the TARDIS, fades in, and
absolutely.
flip it around, and then just do the boyfriends arc over these seasons would be really
I
cool.
think also too of just like this is like the first time that I think that the Doctor has quote unquote caught feelings for somebody like they absolutely don't know. Like I know like the Doctor felt like they didn't know Clara at certain points, and like River was like a question mark for the longest time. But I think obviously these people were huge parts of his time streams in multiple ways. But this is so interesting because like they both have aliases. They both don't actually know each other's real names. The
Yeah, and this
Doctor
is
and
not a
Rose.
character that like I love that you brought up River because it's like, yeah, 10 didn't know River, but River knew 10. Like
Exactly.
that's the thing. They were always meeting out of order. Rogue, if had the Doctor not showed up, would have just done their job and kept moving. They're not a part
Absolutely.
of the Doctor's lore. They're
Absolutely.
just another space traveler, and so that opens it up a lot. Like, shit, I don't know how expensive Jonathan Groff is, but do a 6-part Rogue miniseries on Disney Plus. Like,
Listen, I will
yeah.
fund it myself. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I listen here, you godforsaken mouse. If you really want to fund the Jonathan Groff series, I will give you the money
For the sickos.
for the sickos. For the sickos, damn it! Absolutely, absolutely. Don't even tempt me with a
Uh,
good time like that. Like
so good.
absolutely.
Now they could be like Tony Award winner Jonathan Groff.
Well,
Like
yes,
it's right there. You could
correct.
just he's even more high profile now. And how lucky are they
But
to have put him in this, and then he's at the peak of his powers. Uh, yeah, very cool. I think my last thought about the next season would be um, I am pro musical sequence, maestro or otherwise, because the Goblins obviously had one. So more songs, original songs, great. And I again, it's just a little bit more of the domestic. I would love to see what 15's hobbies are. Like how Peter had guitar playing, and Matt Smith, like not so much a hobby, but just like what's your thing? What's your fez? What's your little quirk? What's your object that you really love? Like we saw this jukebox, but like they never have a jam session. Put on the jukebox,
that
dance.
is true.
Like,
I think
yeah,
it's like maybe in Shooter's thing, his thing is that he doesn't have a thing. And
yeah.
I think that is because, like, how do I say it? The Doctor in the past, you wear the same outfit all the time, and so much of what you do is the same all the time, to where you have to do like at least one thing that's different.
It's a good
But it
point.
Shooter does everything different, you know?
Yeah. That's
And
a
he
good
also
point.
dresses for the occasion. Like he's like, some days I feel like a leather jacket, some days I feel like showing my chest hair. It just,
Mhm.
it just depends on, who I wake up
I love
as.
the 73 yards outfit that is only in the episode for like 2 minutes. Big ass yellow coat, red hat,
Oh
like
my
it's
gosh, that
so
was
random.
awful. Like my
That
thing is this, like he's typically so fashionable. I've never seen him like I'm like,
ugh,
like he wears like the rings, he has gold chains on. Like in a lot of ways, he is really too cool to be the Doctor. Like he's like
yeah.
legit cool. Like he's a guy, like if he went to school with you, you would like want him to be your friend, or you would want him to be like student body president.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Like I was a student government kid, so like that was how I made friends. And since like, okay, like, do you want to be student body president? Cool.
100%. Oh yeah, and I mentioned it earlier, but anybody watching this that hasn't seen Sex Education, if you binge that now, it will help you get through this wait, and you will get more Shooty delivering amazing performances.
I have not seen Sex Education. I do want to. I'm so overwhelmed currently with all
Oh
of
yeah,
this.
there's too
The
much.
Bear
Yeah.
comes out next week.
In a
I'm
binge, so you have to watch all of it.
and then that's Forbidden Door weekend, and I'm going. So
Ugh,
like I'm
my
going
God.
to
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what I can do. I'm gonna see if I can like download the episodes beforehand. Can you download episodes on Disney Plus? I'm
I
gonna try.
think you get it. You get a certain amount, but you should be able to. Yeah.
So that's happening. Like I said, I'm doing this full X-Men rewatch ahead of Deadpool and Wolverine next month. So much wrestling.
Yeah.
So much wrestling. So
It's
much
like
wrestling.
we're blessed in all of our fandoms with way too much shit. Like the fact that right now there's, I mean, tonight it ended, but we just had a couple weeks where for the first time ever, Doctor Who, Star Wars, and the Game of Thrones world were all happening. While
Crazy, right?
wrestling is still happening, with the Bear coming up, with the MCU coming back, with
Bridgerton just ended.
Bridgerton being back, like it's too much in a
We're
good way.
back,
But yeah,
guys.
we're
Yeah,
so back.
we're so back. I think that's a great way to end it. Thanks so much for coming. This was fun. I love
Yeah.
Doctor Who. If in case like I haven't said it a million times on everything I do, I love Doctor Who. Like I actually, I started toy collecting a few years ago, so I have one pack. It's like this huge. It's like this huge box. I'm about to be embarrassed. It was $100, but hear me out. It is an 11-figure set of the first 11 Doctors. Like they're like full
Yeah.
6-inch figures. So I had to buy it. I was at a
No,
vintage store. I had to
that's
buy
a
it.
need.
And then I have a figure of David Tennant's Doctor with the adipose.
Oh, that's great.
I have that. And so even when I went and found that TARDIS while I was in London, there's like this gift shop right next to it. And like they have like a whole bunch of like I love London stuff, but there's also a lot of like old Doctor Who stuff. So I got like this thicker pack from 10th Doctor era with Martha just sitting at my dining room table. I said all this to say, like, guys, I'm a real nerd. I really, really, really do love Doctor Who. And so I'm really glad it's back. Truly, for me as a fan, I feel like from watching it, like this Doctor as an adult at a time in my life where I feel like I am really finding myself and exploring my identity and who I want to show up as in the world and like really wanting to make a mark and like to see stuff like this happen has been just really cool. And also just in the sense of just being a kid again as a fan, it just feels special when Doctor Who is back. You know, it just feels like this is my comfort show. Like when for the last probably 10 years of my life, when I have a bad day and I have like, when I'm going through a really bad depressive spell, like, and I need to stay home all weekend, I'm watching all my favorite episodes, guys. Like that's what I do. So I'm just really happy that the show is back. I'm happy that Russell T Davies is back. Happy to have Stephen Moffat back. It's happy to have Murray Gold back. Good God.
Yes.
Thank God. Thank God for you, sir.
I cannot wait. I'm glad you brought him up again because I think sometime this weekend, if it's out already, because I know Star Wars releases their soundtracks while the season's happening. I don't know if Doctor Who does that. So whenever this
I think
series
they do
soundtrack drops, I'm gonna be rocking out to the score and to the two songs, the Goblin song. The Goblin song has been out, but
it's always a twist.
The twist. I was
I think
down for the twist.
also whatever that song was on the score at the end of Dot and Bubble was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like that was fantastic. Of just like it's real when songs with no words, you just like, oh my God, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that only Doctor Who can do. Well, no, not only Doctor Who. It's Doctor Who, Star Wars, Harry Potter. I feel like always had very strong scores.
Mm-hmm.
Like bring that back. Strong scores with real orchestras. There's certain things that AI can't do, and that's one of them. So,
oh, that's another thing. Russell's cooking an AI episode. Russell's cooking an AI episode.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's this season or season 3 or whatever, but it's coming.
You know it. It's coming.
Moffat and him are emailing back and forth.
Oh, it's coming.
Ready to rip this.
100%. I'm actually really just because we won't see them again until after the election.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
That's all I gotta say. That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Just know Doctor Who doesn't come back until after the election, and they're gonna have something to say about it. So just leaving that there. But thank you so much for joining me today. This
Thanks for
was so
having
much
me.
fun. I had so much fun, and we'll have you back on when we do it all again.
Hell yeah.
Whenever it comes back. But thank you. Where can we find you? And do you have anything that you like to plug?
Sure, yeah, you can find me at that Alden Diaz, ThatAlden, tweeting mostly about Star Wars, healthy amount of wrestling, healthy amount of Doctor Who and other stuff. And yeah, that's my personal, and then my podcast, Octo Radio Star Wars Podcast. That's back soon. That's been going on for the last few years, and that's me interviewing people involved in Star Wars from the fan level all the way up to the directors of the movies, which I've been fortunate to do. Fridays, Anytime with Ken and Alden is our my radio show, just basically radio style. That was at the time of this recording in the day. We're recording this on a Friday, and then that's live. So those links will be all over my socials, and yeah, trivia stuff, nerd stuff all over. I don't stop doing this. I work in radio, so that's the other thing. I didn't say that in this episode. I might have. Well, actually, I did. But never shutting up is what pays my bills. So.
Oh, that's so beast. I'm trying to get like you. Like that's the goal.
I'm trying to get like you because you telling somebody earlier that I was doing this tonight, and so now you're gonna have to hear compliments, which is everyone's favorite thing. But the way that you have carved your space out with your commentary and finding your way in what is, like, we all know it, a toxic, carny fucking space about it's a carny space about carnies. And using your voice to platform not just like your friends and allies, but also these artists and performers around the world, many of whom are breaking into English audiences for the first time and making those connections and just leading with love and dealing with bullshit. Like, it's great. And I hope that, I don't know who, so I'm not going to like throw out a brand because I don't want to step on any toes or reveal business, but like there needs to be a big site, I don't know if it's Sports Illustrated or whatever, that picks you up, throws you on the wrestling beat, someone who knows what they're talking about, that understands that it's a storytelling art form, and not just, like we're stuck in 2002. It feels like sometimes,
yeah, man,
with the way we cover this, and it's like, no, dude, this is art. Like, we need to
sometimes
be
you
talking
just
about it like
want
it's
to
art.
talk about the graps, like I think
Crap,
especially right now, I feel more inspired by wrestling than I have in a very long time, of just like, and something about Forbidden Door season that just makes me feel like anything is possible. Like anything is possible. And that, and I hate to sound cliche and get really like Dr. King on everybody, but Forbidden Door season is a reminder that we truly do have more in common than we do have different. Like, especially for people who are here for wrestling, most of us have the same, are looking for the same things. Like, for people who are actually here for the wrestling parts of wrestling, like, I genuinely believe that we all want to see a more connected universe where we can all connect with each other. I think, like, I told you this, like, my journey of just going from, like, I'm from the American South, like, I'm from South Carolina, and the fact that I've been to all these places, I could say I have friends in, like, in the UK and Japan, all over the world. Like, it's just so cool. And like meeting all these people through wrestling. And like, I know and I'm not the only person who has that experience. So I'm really grateful. I appreciate you for the kind words. And yeah, my phone line is open. So, hey, if anybody from, big site, big, radio station.
Let's get you in that. I know you've been in one before, but we got to get you Forbidden Door in the scrum. I want to hear you in the scrum.
I applied, so, but I haven't got an answer back, so I don't have a yes or no. But if I do get it, it will be my 10th credentialed major event in a year. So it'll be 10th. It'll be like, I think it'll be my 5th AEW credentialed pay-per-view.
Nice.
Crazy.
Time flies.
Just crazy. But yes, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming. And you all know me at Lyric Wrestling. You'll find me on Twitter and Instagram, and you can subscribe on YouTube at Lyric Swinton. I'm sure I have something to tell you guys. I just don't think I can remember right now. It's okay. If you follow me, this is Maps and Yaps anyway. This isn't about wrestling. So, whatever. Thank you. And honestly, I think that's what means the most for me. I was very shocked that a lot of people actually listen to like the X-Men review. This is something different for me. So like, really like dipping my toes into like non-wrestling content. And most of the stuff that I've done so far has been received pretty well. And a lot of it is due to like guests like yourself who come on here and yap with me about, how 8 episode seasons are destroying the earth. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And if there's anything that people want me to watch that I'm not already watching and wants me to review, let me know. I'm trying to, like I said, I need to catch up on the Acolyte. I'm 2 episodes behind.
Look at you there. I'm here to answer all Acolyte questions. You DM me whenever. That goes for everybody watching too. If you're
Yes,
like, what's happening with? I got you. I'm
we
awake.
have a real Star Wars expert here, and I thought that I was like down for Star Wars, but like no, you're down. Like you're down.
It's a lot. It's bad.
It's
It's bad.
have you ever been to any of the wax museums?
I've been to the Orlando one. I don't know. None of the ones I've been to have. The London one has Star Wars stuff.
I've been to the London one and the Berlin one, and they have
Yeah.
full Star Wars exhibits. It's actually kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it's why. Like it goes
Like
deep.
they have like Leia with the chain around her neck,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
with Jabba the Hutt. Like they have like Darth Vader up here after he's cut Luke at the wrist. They
Yeah.
have like Darth Maul mid battle. Like they have like Anakin, and Obi-Wan and their final battle. Like
One of
no.
these days, look, I'll tell you, not to extend this goodbye forever, but so I had Mercedes on my Star Wars show under the pretense of Star Wars. So it's not really a wrestling conversation, but of course we got some in there. This was after leaving WWE, but before signing with AEW that we knew of. And she was wonderful. We did like a 30-minute interview. She's hilarious. She's wonderful. She's beautiful. She's incredible. She's smart. All that stuff.
Oh my god.
Her dog said hi to my dog. It was great.
Oh my
And
god.
ever since then, in my mind, and we might have to talk about this, I've wanted to do a podcast about how wrestling and Star Wars are fundamentally the same
Oh,
mythologically, and the drama, not just in terms of fandoms, but like when like example, like everyone in the wrestling community obviously had their eyes on Cody Mania, because how could you not, in some capacity, whether you like WWE, you don't. Cody's story was like, that was like ESPN level. Everyone knew about it.
absolutely.
And Cody Avengers Endgame became the thing. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Haha, I get it. But Cody's story is not the Avengers story. Cody's story is Star Wars. The spirit of his father hangs over everything he does, as
Absolutely.
he is fighting this empire and all these things. And I have been begging in emails to try to get Cody to come on and talk about Star Wars, because he really loves it. So I'm single-handedly trying to be the bridge between these two worlds. And I know you can join me in this, and
Absolutely.
there'll be fun conversations to be had, because it's that type of melodrama of like,
That's a really good point about
it's, yeah. Oh,
I
it's just,
and
and also just like there's some, there's, like what the EVPs right now are doing in AEW is like a great example. Like just this league of shitheads that are pulling the strings and all that stuff. Like that's the Clone Wars. Like I've seen these silly ass dudes pulling the strings, like
you
trolling the
know,
society. Like,
back to if you go back to Cody, it's also interesting because Luke was a great Jedi, but he wasn't a great teacher,
no.
which makes me like, of the thing. It
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of like Cody and AEW, of the sense of
Mm-hmm.
Cody's obviously a star,
Yeah.
but just because you're a star doesn't mean that you need to be in management or booking your own creative.
No.
And like, of just in the sense, and it kind of like really backfired in his face, kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost like, Kylo Ren backfired.
And even it's even true in kayfabe, because
Yeah,
Cody, the character, is not a good
absolutely.
teacher either, because his one apprentice is Maxwell, and Maxwell turns evil really quick in AEW's history.
Just
Um,
like Kylo Ren.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, this is all. It's all. I mean, the stuff with Becky and Trish of like the intergenerational fighting, the stuff that happens in Japan about everything that fundamentally strong style is built on, and the idea of spirit, and when or even like when Eddie was on his run and becoming Triple Crown, talking about ancient, it's like talking about ancient Jedi, the way that he
Yeah.
would talk about the stuff that he would watch, and like
Like he talked about them.
walking the King's Road, and yeah.
You're so right. Yeah.
We'll do
I
it. We'll do it.
this much. Yes, you
Yeah.
keep me in the loop. I will be there. And then and I'll give my full synopsis about how the four pillars of heaven are the ancient Jedi order.
Yes, 100%.
And we talk about
Oh.
how Misawa is like the ancient Jedi. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
down. That sounds
Mhm.
great. Thank you so much again.
Yeah,
We're actually going to get off this time.
it's
I
true.
appreciate everybody for listening to Maps and Yaps. And like I said, be on the lookout soon because the bear is coming and so am I. Okay. But until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.